Now you have the basics concerning the definitions of sustainability and sustainable development. In this lecture, we will go together through the evolution of the sustainability discourse in the past decades. We will briefly present how the narrative has changed over the years in order to revamp the fashion of the sustainability concept and keep it up to date with evolving societal challenges. Do you know the main evolution steps of these ideas? Let's go through them together. Since the 70s, policymakers gave strong importance to environmental challenges as the main pillar to be addressed, posing attention to urgent environmental problems. It is the season of the first global energy crisis, of the acknowledgement of the limits to grow through the release of the study by the Club of Rome in 1972. For the first time in history, the viability of continued growth in the human ecological footprint was questioned. This peculiar societal contingency gave impulse to global action. The United Nations Conference on the Human Environment held in Stockholm in 1972 is generally recognized as the first milestone on the pathway towards sustainable development, with the call for global environmental policies and the establishment of the United Nations Environment Programme, the agency that coordinates the UN environmental activities, assisting developing countries in implementing environmentally sound policies and practices. Putting the environmental system on top is rational because it refers to the biosphere we live in and where the economic and social systems can flourish. In this case, we refer to the bullseye sustainability model, whereby society and economy combined operate within the biosphere and according to the natural limits of the environment. This model is the closest representation for the strong sustainability approach. Later, the World Commission on Environment and Development, established in 1983, led to the worldwide known definition of sustainable development through the release of the Brundtland Report in 1987. Afterwards, recognizing the importance of the economic pillar has been a must to most international institutions such as the United Nations, with the UN Development Programme and the World Bank. Scholars refer in this case to the Mickey Mouse sustainability model. According to this pragmatic, weak sustainability model, economic activities are recognized as the main drivers of our society and predominantly influence the environmental and social bottom lines. The next step was the gathering at the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, also known as the Earth Summit in Brazil, in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro. The outcome of this event was the establishment of the Commission on Sustainable Development in 1993 and the delivery of the Agenda 21, a global partnership able to address the problems of the present and prepare the international community for the challenges of the upcoming century. What happened next? Have you ever heard about the MDGs and the SDGs? Around the turning of the century, with the launch by the United Nations of the global initiative called Millennium Development Goals, the MDGs, societal challenges have gained much attention. The program adopts a goal-setting approach to better channel funds and orient policies towards ambitious sustainability targets to be achieved by 2015. This focuses mostly on eradicating extreme poverty in undeveloped and developing countries through 8 priority goals. The effectiveness of the Millennium Agenda had lights and shadows, and was the reason for elaborating a new set of Sustainable Development Goals. Hence, at the United Nations Rio +20 Summit for Sustainable Development in Brazil, UN member states agreed on new directions. The current holistic view offered by the Agenda 2030, adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015, is trying to rebalance the widening of sustainability concern. Specifically, the new agenda proposes 17 Sustainable Development Goals, known as SDGs. The SDGs do not entirely summarize the agenda, but are the pressure points that have the capability to affect the well-being of the entire planet and the people who live on it, according to urgent and global challenges. They represent both specific goals and means to general goals. In fact, the SDGs combine in one unique and comprehensive agenda the environmental dimension given by the original definition of the sustainable development with the social dimension addressed by the previous MDGs. The slogan is "Leaving no one behind," aiming at relaunching the uncompleted agenda of the MDGs and extending its message to all. It means to both developing and developed countries. Hence, which are the core values underpinning the Agenda 2030? Universality. The agenda is global and commits all countries. Leaving no one behind. The agenda seeks to reach out all people. Interconnectedness and indivisibility. The agenda recognizes the complex links among the given sustainability development goals. Inclusiveness. The fulfillment of the agenda invites all segments of society to join. Multi-stakeholder partnerships. The agenda fosters to establish multi-actor partnerships for sharing knowledge and mobilizing resources including skills, technologies, and funding. Accordingly, sustainable development has been reframed as the development that meets the needs of the present while safeguarding Earth's life support system, on which the welfare of current and future generations depends. Following this definition, the environmental challenges that threaten the preservation of the biosphere are on top of the agenda, in line with the previously introduced bullseye sustainability model. In the previous lecture, we introduced the traditional three pillars of sustainable development: environmental, social, and economic sustainability. A more recent conceptualization of the sustainability pillars extends sustainability concerns to 5 focus areas, the so-called 5 Ps, namely people, prosperity, planet, partnership, and peace. Hence, beside the well-known social, economic, and environmental dimensions, partnerships and peace are now placed at the same level of priority. The so-called Sustainable Development Wedding Cake scheme helps us better understanding the complexity behind the 5 Ps approach. What is the wedding cake of sustainable development? It is a schematic representation of the complex interdependency of the sustainability dimensions. On the basis, the biosphere is the common ground for everything else, for society and economic activities within society. Governance is crossing and suing all these 3 sustainability bottom lines. Therefore, the Agenda 2030 also recognizes the importance of the governance for sustainability as a cross-cutting and essential dimension for sustaining the sustainability pillars. Without posing attention to governance, none of the goals can be achieved. The 17 SDGs can be regrouped according to the 5 Ps as well, and this reflects the structure of this course. The SDGs are subdivided in 169 associated targets. Their progress towards 2030 is monitored at national level by the signatory states. Hence, national statistical institutions are deeply involved in the data collection task. Also, at the local level, regions and cities are exploring ways to track their achievements. In fact, it is very important to recognize the role of everyone, from nations to small institutions and each citizen. The United Nations have launched an initiative called Partnerships for SDGs online platform, a global registry of voluntary commitments and multi-stakeholder partnerships made in support of sustainable development, where everyone can sign up. In short, the 17 goals, the SDGs, aim to revamp the image and efficacy of the abused term of sustainability. In fact, in recent years, the concept has been flanked or even overshadowed by other terms and societal challenges like resilience, transition, global warming, and climate change. Of course, these assume different meanings and scopes, but often have been more effective to convince governments and institutions in general to take action, in a period when sustainability alone was losing appeal. That's why the United Nations have invested a lot of effort in a communication strategy and in a strong and colorful visual identity for the SDGs. The goals are numerous but catchy and memorable and are experiencing increasing recognition in society. Now you should have the basic information on sustainability definitions and history. Follow the course and finally take action.